The fog. It doesn't just sit on the water. It creeps, it hides things. Welcome to Blackwood Cove, a place where the tide doesn't just bring in salt and shells. It brings back the dead. The villagers here, they don't speak much. They keep their lamps burning, even in the day, because they know what the yellow mist means. It was exactly midnight when Elias heard it, the sound of wood scraping against the old dock. A boat had arrived, but there was no captain, no crew, just a single, rotting crate. Elias stepped closer. His heart was hammering against his ribs. Why was the air suddenly so cold? He reached out his hand, slowly. Did he stop? No, he couldn't. The lid creaked open just an inch, and that's when he saw it. Not gold, not fish, but a reflection of his own eyes, staring back from the darkness. Was he alone on that pier? Hell no. Something was standing right behind him. He could feel its breath. It smelled like wet earth and ancient secrets. He didn't dare turn around. He knew the legend. If you look at the curse looks back. And once it sees you, there is no escape. The nightmare had only just begun. Elias froze. His feet were glued to the salt, the breathing behind him. It was heavy, rhythmic, like the tide, but angry. Who's there? The only answer was the rattling of the chains on the empty boat, a sound that pierced the silence. He finally turned, slowly, agonizingly. The dock was empty. Nothing but the yellow mist swirling around his boots. But wait, there was something on the wood, footprints. They weren't human. They were wet and clawed, leading straight into the village, straight toward the only house with a light still burning. His house. His sister was inside, sleeping. He started to run. The fog felt like ice against his skin. Why was the village so quiet? Where were the watchmen? He reached his front door. It was wide open. The hinges were twisted, like something with ungodly strength had ripped them apart. He stepped inside. The air smelled of rotten seaweed and old copper. Sarah? No reply. Only the sound of a rocking chair, creaking upstairs. Creak, creak. He grabbed a rusted knife from the kitchen. His hand was shaking. Was she still alive? He didn't know. He climbed the stairs, one step at a time. Each board groaned under his weight. He reached the bedroom door. The light from his lantern flickered, then died. He was in total darkness. And then he heard it. A whisper, right next to his EAR. You should have left the crate closed. The yellow eyes flashed in the corner. Elias realized then, he wasn't the hunter. He was the prey. And the village? The village was already gone. The floorboards. They didn't just creak. They shuddered. Elias swung his knife into the void, but he hit nothing but cold, damp air. Srah. His scream echoed through the hallway. But the house, it felt different. The walls were dripping, not with water, but with something thick, something black. The yellow eyes, they weren't just in the corner anymore. They were multiplying, dozens of them, glowing in the dark, like embers from a hellish fire. He lunged for the bedroom door. He burst inside, breathless. The window was shattered. Glass lay everywhere, like diamonds on the floor. The bed, it was EMPT. Only a single, yellow, ribbon remained on the pillow. Sarah's ribbon. He looked out the broken window, toward the docks. The village was gone. No houses, no lamps, just the vast, endless mist. And then he saw them, the villagers. They were walking, not on the ground, but into the water. They moved like puppets, their limbs jerky, their heads tilted at wrong angles. They were marching. Stop, please. But they didn't hear him. They couldn't. Their ears were filled with the salt. And the song of the deep, a low, humming vibration that made Elias's teeth itchy. He looked down at his own hands. They were turning, pale. His skin was scaling over. Was he changing? Yes. The curse wasn't just a story. It was a transformation. He felt a hand on his shoulder. A cold, slimy hand. Elias. It was Sarah's voice. but it didn't come from a human throat. It sounded like bubbles in a drowning man's lungs. He turned slowly. She was standing there. Her eyes were gone, replaced by those glowing yellow pits. "It's time to go, brother." The ocean roared, louder than ever. Was there any hope left? Not a chance. The water was calling, and the water always gets what it wants. The wooden floor, it wasn't wood anymore. It was mud, thick, sucking mud. Elias looked at Sarah. Her face was melting. Her skin was turning into gray, slimy scale. "Sarah, no." His own voice. It didn't sound right. It was a crackle, a wet, hollow hiss. He looked at the yellow ribbon on the pillow. It was glowing, a sickly neon. Everything was yellow. The mist, the eyes, the memories. He turned back to the window. The villages were gone. The sea had swallowed them whole. Only the boat remained, the one with the rotting crate. It was drifting closer to his window. One more. Elias. The voice wasn't Sarah's anymore. It was the sea itself. 1,000 voices screaming. In a whisper, he felt the salt filling his lungs. He didn't choke. He didn't gasp. He just breathed. The air was gone. The land was gone. Blackwood Cove was just a tomb now. He stepped onto the windowsill. The drop was hundreds of feet, but the ground was gone. There was only the dark, swirling ABZs. Did he jump? He didn't have a choice. He fell slowly, like a stone in a well. The water hit him like a hammer. Cold, heavy, permanent. He sank, past the houses, past the church, past the bones of 1,000 sailors. At the bottom, he saw it, the great city made of coral and teeth. And there, sitting on a throne of rusted anchors, was the crate. It was wide open now. And inside, it wasn't a monster. It was a mirror. Elias looked into the glass, and he finally understood. The curse wasn't an infection. It was a return. He wasn't a man, lost at sea. He was a creature, coming home. His eyes, they flared one last time. Bright, burning, yellow. The story of Blackwood Cove was finished. But the sea is always hungry. And the mist is coming for you next. The silence. It wasn't empty. It was heavy, like a weight on his chest. Elias was under the waves. But he wasn't drowning. He was awake. His lungs felt like they were made of iron. The water around him, it tasted of old blood and ancient salt. He looked at his hands again. The skin was gone. In its place, shimmering, dark scales. Elias. The voice came from the crate. It didn't ripple the water. It rippled his mind. He swam closer, his movements fluid, like a shark inside the mirror. His reflection was changing. It wasn't him. It was a king of the Lavius. But then he saw it, a flicker of light, far above. A faint flickering, green lamp. Was it a boat? A survivor? No, it was a warning. The village of Blackwood Cove. It wasn't just gone. It was being reset. The mist was pulling back from the shore. The houses were rebuilding themselves, like a movie playing in reverse. The broken windows mending. The dead watchmen standing up. But their eyes, still yellow. Elias realized the truth. The curse doesn't just kill, it replicates. The village was a trap, a giant wooden mouthtrap, waiting for the next traveler, the next soul to see the light. "Go," the sea whispered. "Tell them. We're waiting." Elias felt himself being pushed upward toward the surface. He broke the water, gasping. The air felt like fire in his throat. He was back on the dock. The crate was gone. The boat was silent. He looked at his hands. Human again, soft, weak, pink. Was it a dream? He hoped so. He walked toward his house. The door was shut. The hinges were perfect. He pushed it open. Sarah was in the kitchen, making tea. "You're late, Elias," she said. Her voice was... He smiled. He felt relief. He stepped into the light. I'm sorry, Sarah. I thought I saw. He stopped. Sarah turned around. She held out a cup, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking through him, and in her hand, she held a single yellow flower. The tea is cold, Elias, just like the water. She smiled. Her teeth were sharp, like needles. He looked in the hallway mirror. His reflection didn't have a face, just two burning, yellow holes. The cycle had restarted, and this time, there was no crate to close. The folk horror curse was home. And you're already in IT. Don't look behind you. The backyard. It was always too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the smell of wet earth and rotting wood. Lily found it, buried beneath the old oak tree. A face made of cracked porcelain, eyes like empty pits. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just smiled. She brought it inside. She cleaned the dirt from its plastic skin. She called it her best friend. But friends talk, don't they? Yes. Mommy. The doll says I have to be naughty. Her parents laughed. They thought it was a game, just a child's imagination. They didn't see the doll's eyes shifting. They didn't hear the tiny plastic footsteps at night. What kind of naughty things, Lily? Lily didn't answer. She just looked at her father. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. She wants a new house, a warmer one. That night, the house felt heavy. The air tasted like cold metal. Her father woke up to a sound, a wet, ripping sound. Was it the wind? No. He walked into Lily's room. The moonlight hit the floor, revealing something impossible. The doll was sitting on the bed, but it wasn't a doll anymore. It was wearing his daughter. The nightmare had finally found a home. The father's breath. It stopped. There, in the center of the room, stood Lily. But it wasn't Lily. The porcelain head of the doll was sewn onto his daughter's neck. The plastic skin was cracked. The eyes were hollow, yet they were tracking him. Lily? His voice was a whisper, a plea. The creature tilted its head. A sickening crunch echoed through the room. Bone against plastic. Lily is gone, the doll child hissed. I am the new Lily. He turned to run. He had to get his wife. He had to get out. He reached the bedroom door. But before his hand could touch the handle, the door slammed. Boom! The lock clicked on its own. He pulled. He kicked. It wouldn't budge. Honey, open the door. His wife screamed from the hallway. Then she stopped. A low, guttural growl started behind him. He turned around. Slowly, the doll child was no longer across the room. It was right there, inches from his face. It didn't use its hands. It opened its mouth, wide, wider than any human jaw should go. Rows of jagged, yellowed teeth. Time to play, Daddy. He tried to scream, but the first bite took his throat. Piece by piece, the room went red. The naughty things had only just begun. The flashing lights, blue and red. They danced against the overgrown grass. Officer Miller stepped over the yellow tape. The house stood, silent, too silent. Hello, police? No answer. Only the smell. It hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't just blood. It was plastic, burnt plastic, and old earth. He pushed the front door open. It didn't creak. It swung wide, as if it were welcoming him. He found the parents in the kitchen, or what was left of them. My God, they weren't just dead. They were dismantled like broken toys, piece by piece. But where was the girl? Where was Lily? He followed a trail of wet, muddy footprints. They led to the basement door. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound was coming from behind the wood, like a mouse with sharp claws. Miller drew his weapon. His hand was trembling. Lily? Is that you, honey? The scratching stopped. A tiny voice, muffled and distorted, drifted through the cracks. She's sleeping. Officer, I'm the one. Who's wide awake? The door didn't just open. It exploded off its hinges. Miller fired once, twice, into the darkness. But the bullets, they didn't thud into flesh. They sounded like they hit hollow plastic. Clink. Clink. He shone his light down the stairs. There were hundreds of them. Dolls, all with their heads missing. And at the bottom, the doll child was waiting. She held a rusted needle and a long, thick strand of human HAIR. Do you want to play DOCTOR? The basement light flickered, and Miller realized he wasn't there to rescue anyone. He was just more parts. The radio in the patrol car. It was buzzing, static, a high-pitched whine. Officer Miller didn't come back. The station was silent. Miller, do you copy? No voice. Only the sound of tiny plastic feet running across the pavement. The mist from the backyard. It wasn't staying in the garden anymore. It was spreading a thick, yellow fog that tasted like old copper. In the neighboring house, a little boy woke up. He heard a thump. He looked under his bed. Two eyes, hollow and black, stared back. Do you have a needle? The voice whispered. The boy didn't scream. He couldn't. His mouth was already sewn. By midnight, the streetlights began to flicker. One by one, they went dark. In every window, a shadow appeared. Not a person, a doll. They weren't just toys anymore. They were replacements. The town's backup generator. It didn't fail. It was cut. The darkness was absolute. Suddenly, the sirens started. Not the police, the ambulances. But they weren't picking up the sick. They were dropping off crates, thousands of them, all marked with the same cracked smile. Is anyone left? The question echoed through the empty streets. The answer? A chorus of plastic clicking together. The town of Oak Haven was gone. It was a showroom now, and the master, the one with the porcelain head, she was sitting on the roof of the police station, holding Miller's badge. Next town over, she hissed. The dolls began to march, their joints popping with every step. The invasion wasn't a war. It was a makeover. And the world was looking a little too real. Time to make it plastic. The yellow mist. It wasn't just gas. It was spores. Millions of microscopic plastic seeds. They didn't just drift. They hunted. Lily or the thing wearing her stood at the edge of the town. The world beyond was vibrant, full of life, full of flesh. So much unfinished material, she whispered. The ground beneath her began to crack, not from an earthquake, from something growing. A massive porcelain root burst through the concrete. It was cold, it was white, and it was smooth. The truth? The doll wasn't from a factory. It was from the core, an ancient synthetic intelligence waiting for a child to dig it up, waiting for a coast. Are we ready? The dolls behind her clicked their jaws in unison. The mist began to glow, a blinding, toxic yellow. It wasn't just covering the world, it was rewriting it. The trees turned into polyester. The rivers turned into liquid acrylic. The screaming, it stopped, because the people didn't have throats anymore. They had ventriloquist slots. The last human heart in Oak Haven gave one final vent, and then silence. The doll child looked up at the moon. It wasn't a rock anymore. It was a button. The earth is pretty. Now she giggled. But was she happy? No. A doll is never happy. A doll is only finished. She turned her head 360 degrees to look at you. The screen you are watching, it's not a screen. It's a window. And the mist? It's already in your room. Don't breathe too deep. The naughty friend just found a new backyard. Yours. The woods. They don't belong to us. We think we own the land. We think we map the trails, but some places, they stay hidden for a reason. My name is Elias, and what I am about to tell you is not a ghost story. It is a warning. It started with a photo, an old, grainy Polaroid I found in my grandfather's attic. It showed a line of trees, thick and suffocating, and there, right in the center, was a face. But it wasn't a human face. It was a pure bone, white, no eyes, no mouth, just a blank plastic stare. I showed it to the locals in Oakhaven. They didn't want to look. They turned their heads. They closed their shops. "Don't go into the North Ridge," the old barman whispered. His hand was shaking so hard the glass rattled. "Why?" I asked. He leaned in close. His breath smelled of tobacco and fear. "Because the woods, they have a hunger. They don't want your blood, Elias. They want your identity." Did I listen? No, I was young. I was stupid. I grabbed my camera. I grabbed my flashlight. And I drove toward the edge of the map. The sun was setting, casting a sickly yellow glow over the canopy. The air felt heavy, like someone was pressing their thumb against my throat. I stepped past the first line of trees. The birds, they stopped singing. The wind, it died. Total, deafening silence. And then I heard it. Snap. The sound of a dry branch breaking. Behind me, I turned my flashlight on. The beam cut through the yellow mist, and there, pinned to a rotting trunk, was a mask, exactly like the one in the photo. But this one was warm. It was dripping. Was I alone? I wanted to believe it. But then, the mask, it blinked. The woods were no longer just trees. They were a trap. And I had just walked right into the jaws. The mist, it didn't just drift anymore. It began to clot. Thick yellow. Vapor began to swirl around my knees. It felt like walking through cold oil. I checked my GPS. The signal was dead. The screen was just a mess of flickering, green, static. Great. I kept walking. I had to find a landmark, a trail, anything. That's when I saw it. The cabin. It looked like it was being eaten by the forest. Thorns and vines were wrapped around the windows like skeletal fingers. The wood was black with rot, but there was a light, a single flickering candle in the upstairs window. "Hello?" My voice felt small. It felt wrong. I stepped onto the porch. Each board screamed under my weight. Creak. Snap. The front door wasn't locked. It was ajar, just an inch. I pushed it open. Slowly. The smell. It wasn't death. It was worse. It smelled of laundry detergent and bleach. The house was clean. Too clean. On the kitchen table, there were 3 plates, 3 forks, and 3 white masks. They were sitting there, waiting for dinner. I felt a chill run down my spine. My skin began to will. Is someone here? Thump, thump, thump. The sound came from the ceiling. Heavy footsteps. I looked up. The plaster was cracked. And through the cracks, I saw something pink. It was an eye moving, searching. I backed a ways. But I tripped. I fell against the wall. And that's when I felt it. The wall wasn't made of wood. It was soft. I ripped back the peeling wallpaper. Behind the paper, there were no bricks. There were no beams. There were only faces. Hundreds of them, sewn together, stretching from the floor to the ceiling. Some were old. Some were young. But all of them were missing their eyes. My God. I scrambled to my feet. I had to leave. Now. I turned toward the door, but it was gone. There was only a wall of masks, staring at me with empty plastic sockets. Then, the candle upstairs went out. The silence was broken by a giggle. A high-pitched, childish giggle. "Don't run, Elias." The voice came from the walls, from the faces. "We just want to, borrow your smile." I felt a hand touch the back of my neck. It was cold. It felt like porcelain. Was I trapped? Yes. Was I dead? Not yet. The scary ghost stories weren't stories at all. They were invitations, and I was the guest of honor. The porcelain fingers. They didn't just touch me, they clung to me, like a spider, grabbing its prey. I spun around, swinging my heavy flashlight. Cracked. The light hit something hard, something hollow. A mask shattered on the floor, but there was no head behind it. No brain, no blood, just a puff of yellow smoke. The giggle. It grew louder. It was coming from the floorboards now. The basement. Elias, the voices whispered in unison. The Maker is ready. I didn't want to go down. I wanted to see Low W through the walls. But the house, it was moving. The hallway was stretching, narrowing, until there was only one path left. The door to the cellar. It was painted a bright, sickening yellow. I had no choice. Behind me, the walls of faces were beginning to peel off. They were sliding across the floor like wet snails. I kicked the cellar door open and tumbled down the stairs. Thump, thump, crunch. I hit the bottom. My flashlight flickered, then stabilized. I wished it hadn't. The basement was a factory, but there were no machines, only silk. Thousands of white, glowing threads hanging from the ceiling. And trapped in those threads, people. They weren't dead. Their chests were moving, slowly, but they were blank. Their features had been erased. No noses, no mouths, just smooth, fleshy skin where their identities used to be. In the center of the room stood a figure, tall, thin, wearing a black cloak that seemed to drink the light. He was holding a needle made of bone, and on his workbench was a mask that looked exactly like me. Every face is a lie, the figure hissed. His voice sounded like dry leaves scraping on a gravestone. I am the truth. I am the collector of the forgotten. He stepped forward. The yellow mist in the room was so thick I could taste it. It tasted like sticky plastic. Why me? I gasped. My knees felt like water. The figure stopped. He tilted his head. Because your eyes, Elias, they see too much. I need them for my masterpiece. He raised the needle. Was I going to be another face on the wall? No. I grabbed a jar of bleach from a shelf and hurled it at his feet. Snudged. The liquid hissed against the yellow mist. A chemical reaction. The room erupted in a blinding white flash. I ran. I didn't look back. I climbed those stairs like my soul was on fire. But as I reached the top, I felt a sharp, stinging pain in my cheek. I reached up. My hand came away wet, but it wasn't blood. It was the transformation had started. The white paint. It wasn't just on the surface. It was seeping into my muscles. I burst through the front door of the cabin and hit the dirt. The yellow mist was everywhere now. It wasn't just in the air. It was coming out of my own pores. I looked at my hands. My fingernails were turning into stickers. My skin felt stiff like hard, cold vinyl. I have to get to the car. I have to get out. I stumbled toward the trail, but the trees, they were different now. They weren't wood anymore. They looked like mannequin limbs, pale, smooth, and twisted into horrific shapes. And the masks, they were everywhere, hanging from branches, peering from the bushes. Each one was whispering my name. Elias. Join the collection, Elias. Be perfect. I reached the spot where I parked my car, but the car was gone. In its place stood a giant wooden crate. The lid was open, and inside, it was filled with yellow straw. No, no, no. I turned to run back, but my legs wouldn't move. They felt locked like the joints of a doll. Click, clack, click. I looked down. My knees were no longer skin and bone. They were ball joints. I was becoming a puppet. The figure from the basement, the mask maker, emerged from the fog. He wasn't walking. He was gliding. Why do you struggle? He hissed. Humanity is messy. Life is painful. But plastic? Plastic is forever. He reached out and touched my face. I couldn't feel his fingers. I couldn't feel the wind. I couldn't feel anything. My senses were fading. One more stitch, Elias. He pulled a long silver needle from his sleeve. But then I saw it. A flicker of light in the distance. Not yellow, not white. A deep, burning red. The village watchman, or something even worse. Was there a savior, or just another hunter? I tried to scream for help, but my jaw was stuck. The transition was almost complete. The red light. It wasn't a lantern. It wasn't a fire. It was a beacon. The ground beneath the mask maker began to vibrate. A low, guttural growl that shook the very air. Rumble, rumble, crack. The red glow intensified, cutting through the yellow mist like a hot blade through wax. What is this? The maker hissed. His bone needle dropped to the dirt. From the shadows of the mannequin trees, they emerged. The Watchers. They weren't dolls. They weren't men. They were ancient, towering figures draped in rusted armor, their heads replaced by glowing, red furnaces. The heat was incredible. I could feel the plastic on my skin beginning to bubble. The purge, the maker whispered. For the first time, he sounded of AFRAID. The Watchers didn't speak. They didn't need to. They raised long iron pikes. They weren't here to save me. They were here to cleanse the woods. Fire erupted from their chests, a torrent of red flame that turned the yellow mist into black soot. The maker screamed, a sound like 1,000 windows shattering at once. He vanished into the smoke. But what about me? I was half human, half plastic. To the Watchers, I was just more trash. One of the iron giants turned toward me. The red light from its head burned into my sockets. I tried to move. My ball-jointed knees, they were melting. I was fused to the ground. Please, I'm still in here. The Watcher stepped closer. Its footfall sounded like a mountain falling. It raised its pike, the tip glowing white-hot. Was this the end? Burned alive in a forest of dolls? WHOOSH. The flame missed my head by an inch. Suddenly, a hand grabbed my collar. A real, warm, human hand. Don't breathe the smoke, kid. I looked up. It was the barman from Oakhaven. But he wasn't wearing an apron. He was covered in a shish and carrying a heavy industrial saw. We have to go. No! Before the purge finishes the job. He didn't wait for an answer. He started the saw. VRA. The blade bit into my plastic legs. I didn't feel pain. I felt freedom. But as we ran, I looked back. The cabin was an inferno, but in the middle of the flames, I saw the maker. He wasn't burning. He was laughing. He pointed his long finger at me. You can't cut it all away, Elias. The plastic is in your blood. We reached the edge of the woods. The air turned cold. The red glow faded. I looked at my legs. They were stumps of raw wood. The barman looked at me with pity. You're alive, Elias, but you're not whole. I looked toward the town, the streetlights. They weren't white anymore. They were yellow. Is it over? No. The maker lost his house, but he just found a new one. The world is about to get very stiff. The barman dropped me onto the cold gravel, his breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. Stay still, Elias. Just stay still. I looked down at my legs. There was no blood, no bone, just the smell of sawdust and burnt rubber. The village of Oakhaven looked wrong. The houses were too shiny. The windows didn't reflect the moon. They reflected a dull, yellow glare. We're safe now. Right, I whispered. My voice sounded like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. The barman didn't answer. He was staring at his own hands. His fingers. They weren't moving. They were stuck in a curved, claw-like position. It's not just the woods. Elias, he choked out. He pulled back his sleeve. His forearm was hollow, a perfect plastic shell. The water, the air, The mist, it's everywhere. Suddenly, a TV in a nearby shop window flickered to life. The news anchor wasn't speaking. She was smiling. A wide, frozen, porcine smile. The banner at the bottom of the screen read, "The era of flesh is over. Welcome." To the showroom, I looked at the people on the street. They weren't running. They weren't screaming. They were posing. One man was holding a briefcase, frozen mid-stride. A woman was pushing a stroller, but the baby inside was just a blank, white mold. The plastic plague hadn't just arrived. It had won. "Why?" I screamed. But my voice didn't come from my throat. It came from hidden in my chest. Crack, pop, snap. My neck jerked to the side. I couldn't move it back. The barman looked at me, his eyes turning into matte, black beads. Because, Elias, humans are fragile. They break. They age, but a doll is timeless. He stood up, his movements perfectly mechanical. "Now, be a good boy and find your pedestal." I looked up at the sky. The stars were gone. In their place were giant, yellow studio lights. The entire world was becoming a toy box. And the maker? He was the one holding the lid. I felt my heart give one last plastic click. And then I stopped. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel pain. I felt shiny. The story of the human race was deleted. But don't worry, you won't be lonely for long. I can see you through your camera. You look beautiful, but you'd look much better in porcelain. See ya on the shelf. System ready for cinematic scripts.